I always think it's so weird when people get so up in arms about like who's third, who's fourth, who's fifth, who's mentioned, because it's like there can only be one. And, rarely is an MVP race close, like down to the fourth or fifth spot. Like you might get like two or three, on occasion it can be four, but like when you're getting to like fifth, it's like, and the other thing about voter philosophy is many voters, not all, but their MVP ballot will often align with who is their all WNBA first team, right? Not always, but often. And so a lot of times when you're talking about that and you're thinking about 2 through 5 and 3 through 5, you're also thinking about who's going to be all W first team. Again, this is not everybody, but for me, they align, And so, when you look at other candidates in this race, we have to look at those two guards on the Indiana Fever, right? They have been so hot since the All-Star break as a team. One of them has been hot all season, right? And so I thought the betting odds were interesting because it gave Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark the same exact odds. And I'm glad because I feel often, Christina, when I'm watching broadcasts and when I see the conversation, everyone always just puts Caitlin ahead of Kelsey. And I really have a hard time figuring out who it should be. What I will tell you, Christina, is that I don't believe in 2 MVPs on a team. It's called most valuable, not multiple valuable. And a team can have multiple valuable players. We're not even talking about Aaliyah Boston, right? Who, in my opinion, is their best all-around, most complete player. Without her, their defense would just be non-existent, and they're already not a great defensive team. And no one even talks about her. And to me, she genuinely is an MVP level player too. So you have 3 players on this squad, right? And on any given night, it can be one of them. But I do think from the beginning of the season, day one till now, I do think Kelsey Mitchell has been their most consistent player. And you talked about availability. She's also obviously played the most games. And so when you're looking to try to decide, I think there's other things to look at when you look at Kelsey Mitchell, her on-offs of how the team performs when she's on versus off are staggering. And like, it's the same for Caitlin. It's not exactly the same, but what I'm saying, obviously, when Caitlin's on versus off and same thing, but like, it really jumps out for you with Kelsey Mitchell. And so we know she's on this crazy 20-point scoring tier right now where like she's right now scored just total the most points in the WNBA. But like, look at this. She's, she now has passed Asia Wilson for the most 20-point games in a row. And she's still going, Christina.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Kelsey Mitchell, to me, is the best player, hands down, on the Indiana Fever. And the availability portion that you mentioned is going to be the tiebreaker when it comes to Caitlin Clark and her. Because with Caitlin Clark missing those 4 games, the Fever were 4-0 without Caitlin Clark on the floor. You mentioned Aaliyah Boston. Yeah, they have a complete and total team. But I think that when you look at Kelsey Mitchell, it's about her elite scoring, her efficiency. She's second in the league in points per game, behind Asia Wilson, and second in the league behind Asia Wilson in win shares. And so I think that that's important when you talk about the Indiana Fever having the best offense overall in the league. Kelsey Mitchell is a huge part of that. But I think Caitlin Clark's case is different in the terms of how she's able to initiate and create that offense so that the Fever could have the top offense in the league. But again, this is an individual award, not a team award. And so I think that when it comes to MVP voting, I think it's important to also let fans know that this is one of the only categories on the ballot that's ranked 1 through 5, and the points matter. And I think that it matters in the sense that there's more money on the line in terms of award money that players will receive at the end of the season should they earn these awards. So that's what's important, right? Getting those points and runner-ups and all those things matters when it comes down to the
Yeah.
money aspect, the financial incentive of being named an MVP, being on all WNBA. Those things matter. But when you look at the Fever success, I agree. Kelsey Mitchell is a huge part of that consistency that we see on the offense. But they're one of the best duos in the WNBA. And so I think that voters will have such a hard time when it comes down to which player to put on their ballot.
For sure. And like some ballots may include both of them. Mine is not going to because like I said, I don't believe in that. And while it's a hard choice, you have to make a choice,
Right.
Caitlin has been on a tear since the All-Star break, and that is amazing. But we look at seasons over their entirety. And so, like I said, I do think Kelsey has been their most consistent player. And I still genuinely don't know. Like when we had to do all-star voting, I picked, Caitlin Clark over Kelsey Mitchell then, and I said, like, it's very hard to say, like, who really drives things for the Fever. So this is not like an easy decision. But it's for me, it's only going to be one that I pick, in terms of my MVP ballot. And we will see. And I also think, they could also move up in the race too, just depending on where the Fever land. And right now, they dropped a couple of games, and I think that right now they're in sixth. No, they're in fifth, but they could still move up, And so we just really have to see how the season plays out for them. But both Fever guards in the running for MVP. And I just quickly, Christina, I want to touch on two players who I think are being overlooked right now in this race, if you will. And I might be sort of contradicting myself because I said, like, when you're 4 or 5 at this point, like, why does it really matter? But I do think it's important to acknowledge the seasons that people are having and how great they are playing. And those two players for me are Paige Beckers and Breanna Stewart, right? And I think Breanna Stewart honestly has been the most overlooked, right? Like I see all the these broadcasts and like all these games where like they display MVP favorites and Breanna Stewart isn't even listed. Now, Paige Becker's name was early in the year in that race. Dallas was a top 4 seed, but they encountered some injury issues. Paige had a few down games. And when I say that, I'm not like trying to like ease, be polite. It really was just a few. It was a handful, Christina. And you would think based on that, Paige Beckers is not having a great season, but we just saw the numbers, right? Like she's still having a tremendous season and she's on par with the other MVP candidates. This is the most wins for Dallas. This is a team that finished last in the standings. Like, look at where she has led this team to this year. And we will see how they finish the season. Also receiving news that they're going to be without AZ Fudd, but they had to play games without AZ. They had to play games without AZ and Jessica Shepard, And so, like, look, they had a game against Indiana Fever, 2 games recently. One they won, one they lost. The one they lost, her and Caitlin were going head for head, with their numbers. And so she just had like a 30-point game, and she didn't even play the fourth quarter. So let's not try to take away what Paige Beckers has done all season because Dallas had a little slide. But because they won so much, that's why they're still in the playoff race, and they are several games against, ahead of who's in 9th place. So I just feel like, for me, Paige Beckers is still on the MVP ballot, and I don't understand these arguments that she shouldn't be there. Like the numbers don't say that. All of the games so far up to this point in the season don't say that. So that's how I feel. I'm gonna let you talk about Breanna Stewart and add anything about Paige, but I know you're very familiar with this New York Liberty team. So I'm just curious why you think people just keep overlooking Breanna Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, New York is not having a flashy standout season. So I think that within that, you can kind of put that their season, because it's not as good as people expect, that it's overshadowing Breanna Stewart's production on the court. For me, actually, if I had to do a ballot today, I would have Asia Wilson, Olivia Miles, and then Breanna Stewart. And let me tell you why. Just as much as I think that Asia Wilson is a complete player, when you look at both sides of the floor, Breanna Stewart is right there, and she's my third. And obviously, MVP is not the player with the best season, it's the player with a great season. And that's why I have Asia Wilson, obviously, as my number 1 so far. But I think there's still a strong case for the season that Stewie is having. New York won the Commissioner's Cup. She was the Commissioner's Cup MVP. She was an all-star starter this season. And as you mentioned, no one is talking about Breanna Stewart. Does the Commissioner's Cup not count for anything? They beat the Aces in the Commissioner Cup as well. And so I think that Stewie is a great two-way player candidate. She's averaging 20 points, 8 rebounds, which tells the story of her defense. In win shares, she's a little bit lower on the list than Asia and maybe Kelsey. But I think that her overall production, if you take Stewie out of that New York Liberty lineup, they are not the same team at all. And I think that you may see her on off go down a little bit because when she's not in the game, the team hits a huge swing when it comes to like the defensive production. And so she's really the New York anchor when it comes to offense and defense. And I think that she deserves to be like third on that list when it comes to MVPs, even over a Kelsey Mitchell, a Caitlin Clark, a Paige Beckers. Her complete total line of work this season has been outstanding, especially at her age. People bring up Stewie's age. But I think that, yeah, none of those things should count against her, whether the team record is good or bad. She's having an outstanding season. Again, Commissioner's Cup MVP. She's been player of the week a few times this season. Her points tell it. Her defense tells the story as well. And honestly, without New York, who's been dealing with injury struggles and player availability. Without Stewie, I mean, they wouldn't be the same team today. So obviously, the rest of the season will tell the story. But I think that Breanna Stewart, more people should be talking about her right now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand like the way she's being overlooked, and she shouldn't be. And can we just bring up the standings very quickly, because people love to bring up where New York is in the standings, or like, oh, they're struggling. And it, to me, I genuinely don't know if people are like saying this genuinely, if they're not following, because to me, this feels like a very bad faith argument, okay? Let us look at the standings, because when you look at let's look at 5 through 8, right? Because let's look at the bottom half of the standings. The Indiana Fever are in 5th. They're in sole possession of 5th. They have 14 losses. The New York Liberty are right behind them and only have one more loss. How can people be so adamant that Caitlin and Kelsey are in the MVP race, they're leading it, they're at the top, they're at the best, and then at the same time say Breanna Stewart is not because of where New York is in the standings? That and the same
And
thing
that's where the
for Paige Beckers.
yeah,
Like
and that's
one
where the eye
loss
test
behind
comes
New
in,
York.
Natalie.
But like also
Yeah,
like
that's where the
there's just not a big enough differentiator in the standings, right? Like that has to
right.
be meaningful, in my opinion. It cannot be a 1-game difference and you're telling me the standings. The standings have to be a significant difference for me, Christina. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You were talking about the eye test.
No, I was saying, and that's where the eye test comes in. I mean, the metrics, the stats, advanced data, it tells only one part of the story. For context, like you mentioned, are you watching the games and seeing what's happening on the floor? When I look at the standings and think about New York and the line of work, obviously they have a new coach in Chris DeMarco. It's his first season as a head coach. But when I think people talk about New York's bad season, it's because the standard is that they should be winning, especially with the roster that they have, and just winning a championship in 24. Obviously, they got eliminated in the first round last year, but the standard is winning a championship again in New York City. And so they're held to a higher standard. And when you look at the defense, New York has been struggling even worse than under Sandy Brondello. And so I think that that comes into play when talking about New York. It's just a higher standard that people hold them to. And so while the standings and record may tell one part of the story, I think that the eye test definitely tells a completely different side, which is why I said for me, Stewie is my third as of today in MVP rankings because of the eye test. New York has been having a terrible season by their own standards, by the standards that people hold them against, because they are a championship winning franchise, but also the expectations, especially because they won the Commissioner's Cup and that I think that they've been able to start to click on offense when you talk about Leonie Feebage coming back and that last game that they had over the weekend against the Fever. um, there's a lot of pluses that's been happening for the Liberty as of late. They're finally starting to turn the page in terms of building that chemistry, right? I think that when you look at New York, a lot of people actually think they'll have the same trajectory as the New York Knicks when it comes playoff times in terms of what they'll be able to do come playoff time. And, the regular season come playoff time actually doesn't really matter. Teams start 0-0 and it's a season within itself. And so we'll see. what happens with New York. But I think that when it comes to people saying New York is such a bad team, I think it's more of the eye test thing and the expectations that they have for teams here in New York.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So, look, Christina, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking about the MVP race with you. All of these players that we've discussed, they're worthy, they're deserving, but only one can be MVP. And I just always want to remind people that, like, when we have to put in that vote, we don't hate your fave. It is not like there's no criteria that the league gives us. So each voter tries their best based on what they think matters and, looking at history and what has happened. But only one can win, guys. And that's just what the reality is. Thank you for tuning in with us. Make sure you subscribe to the WNBA on NBC so you do not miss out.
Sure, where you going? Subscribe to the WNBA on NBC YouTube channel for more videos like this.
I could never palm the ball like that.
Oh, you can't?
No, just shoot it.
Oh, it's the jacket.
We have to do it again now.
That's what I'm talking about.
There, Cheryl got it.
Come on now.